So Tania will be sharing her evolution as a photographer. She says that she loves luxury and ease as much as the next senior citizen, but can't resist the next bend in the road wherever it may lead. And I can testify that when she travels, she is immersed. She springs around with all of her senses primed, observing, connecting, and learning. Tania is a writer, photographer, and traveler. She is the author of Mother Tongue, a saga of 3 generations of Balkan women, because I'm 4, and numerous travel stories, some featured in the Best Travel Writing Series. She is also a 4-time prize winner at the Book Passage Travel Writers and Photographers Conference. She has climbed Mount Whitney and Mount Kenya, circumnavigated Annapurna, trekked through Bhutan and Kashmir, and sailed along remote rivers in Burma. And she didn't add this to her bio, but she's experienced flamenco in Indonesia. So, Tania.
Thank you. You're so tall. I'm normal. So this is actually the first time I've ever done this. I have been spending my time talking about my book launch and the rest of my time writing my new book. And what was quite incredible was to meet a group of Russians, because my book is called 100 Years of Exile, Reflections of Russia. We're still waiting for support. Спасибо большое. And my father left Russia 100 years ago, and I still speak the language. So, Misha тоже?
Да.
Speak Russian. We check her.
Yeah, we check me out.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Matthew, if you will go to the next stage. So I kind of started in photography early because my father was a photographer. And so obviously he took that picture. That's myself and my brother. I grew up in a refugee camp, and my father was actually an engineer originally, but in the camp he made money by being a photographer. And we just, our exit from the camp dragged and dragged and dragged, and he spent his time taking pictures of people who were luckier and needed visa pictures. So I became a photographer. What happened?
Sorry.
Jeez. I did want to become a photographer. What happens next? There's a number, right? No? That's next?
That's next.
Okay, well, we'll get there.
Yeah. We'll go back.
I
So
wanted
it's
to
ready.
be a photographer, but the truth is I was horrible at it. So I carried cameras around, I took pictures, I traveled to Europe, I just horrible. Now my mother was worse, that was the good news. She would cut people's heads off. So we don't have a lot of pictures of my father. And on my 10th wedding anniversary, we went to Chateau Lake Louise up in the Canadian Rockies. And I took lots of pictures and came home with a lot of crap. And I finally said, that's it. If I'm gonna take pictures, I need to learn how to do this. So I bought a very expensive camera, high quality, big gear. I took a lot of classes, and I learned Photoshop, so I was really getting ready. And I learned how to use a macro lens and take pictures of flowers, and it was really good. And, but it just felt kind of stuck. And somebody said to me I should take a class with a man called Freeman Patterson. And this talk is actually a tribute to Freeman Patterson. It turned out that he had had a double kidney failure and was supposed to die. And I went to the first workshop he taught after that. And I was told, if you have a skill, he's going to go the opposite of it. If you do macro photography, which is up close work, he's going to make you do wide angle. But he's going to give you a 24-hour project. And so he gave me a 24-hour project. And to my surprise, it was a macro lens. And I had a picture in it. For some reason, we lost it. But I was put on a deck. We had 24 hours. It's in northern Canada in June. It's like forever. I was put on a deck with 3 glass pitchers with a hose and little bottles of food dye. That was it, 3 bottles of food dye. And I was given 24 hours. And I spent the first night with these 3 pitchers of water and the food dye and the hose, and I just tortured myself to death and had nothing. And I woke up in the middle of the night. And I do not wake up with dreams. And this was not a dream. I woke up and I started writing. And I actually recently found, this is the piece of paper
Cool.
that I wrote on in the middle of the night. And I wrote 25 lines. Just a touch of magic. Stairway to heaven. The blue of unrequited love. You go to the next picture. And that was the blue of unrequited love. And I woke up the next morning, and in an hour I had all 25 of these images. And the next one is called The Sharp Edge of Desire. And the one after that is called If There Was Nothing Else to See, Would This Be Enough? And when it was done, I had 25 images. I had 25 descriptions. Cherry cream soda on a summer day, joy bubbling over. I mean, they were just wonderful. And I had music that went with it. You Are the Light of My Life. And I had a show. It was like I went from being crapola to this wonderful show and photography. And it was the beginning of my photographic career. So would you show the rest? And so then we moved on. And suddenly I was a photographer. Freeman Patterson is a nature photographer. He helped me learn how to be creative in photography. These are my impressionist shots. I went from that to, as soon as I see it, I'll tell you. I did start traveling. This is in Vietnam many years ago. I'm going next week. This is in Namibia. This picture sold in copies. In fact, there are 10 in the series for $2,500 a piece, back when photography still used to sell. So that was a series in an abandoned mining town, diamond mines, on the shores of Namibia in the desert. This is in Healdsburg, where I was living at the time. Again, I had a show of these images. They did very well. I went to an abandoned machine shop, and again, did a series. I just had a blast in this machine shop. Thank you. And the next one, hold on, don't move yet. This last one, I showed the picture that you saw with the no admittance sign. The one after it had a naked girl calendar, which I was reluctant to put in the show, but it actually sold the most copies. Anyway, it was a great machine shop. Keep going. So I just really got into photography. So it took several years of this kind of work for me to actually figure out what Freeman Patterson had done. Why did he put me on a deck with, nothing in effect? And that was actually the key to the story. I was so technical and I was so competent and I have such a good mathematical mind that I could figure out how to use the camera, how to use Photoshop, how to focus the camera on a flower and get a perfect image. But I didn't know anything about creating an image, a composition, something that would fascinate you. And he made me take pictures of nothing. And that's what it took for me to learn how to create images. And so I continued. And this is near my house in Healdsburg. I ended up following bald eagles who were fishing. Remind me of the word.
Osprey.
Ospreys. This was just a little pond by my house. And it was amazing. I have a whole book of these things. They're fantastic. And then there are trees in Santa Rosa on 4th Street where egrets and herons nest every year. And so I would take pictures of them. And then I went to Mexico, took pictures of pink flamingos. I just had a lot of fun with photography. And then again, I got into taking pictures of nothing. At the same pond where the eagles were, there was a lot of abandoned equipment. And I got into abandoned equipment, and what I would do, can you guess? this is back in film days, I would take 2 pictures of the same thing, and then I would flip one over, and this was like a mirror image. I went insane on these. I did these for a year. I have a whole show of them, a whole book, and they came, and then they disappeared. It was over. I mean, I just had a blast. So that sold too. Then one day I went to the beach at Big Sur. And in fact, I'm going to tell you another story. It was sunset. Everybody was taking pictures of the sun. I got trapped in a wave, escaped just at the last minute, and everybody turned to me, the people who were there, and said, "Did you get your image?" And I looked down at the camera and I said, "Yeah, I think I did." And they looked at it and they said, "What's that?" And I was taking the sand. Everyone else was taking the sunset. So this is my series on the sand in Big Sur. And continue. So I can't remember why this is number 3, but I'll tell you as soon as I get there. So then I went back to some classes, and we can keep going.
Yeah, we're readjusting. Yeah. Thanks.
Number 3 is not that interesting. Anyway, I then started taking some classes again, trying to do something different. I took a Leica class in San Francisco, and they made us go to a wide angle, which I had not done. Freeman did not make me do that, and I was horrible at it. And I started doing a wide angle, and that's what this is. I'm standing right next to this guy who's skateboarding or something down the stairs. This is a bride walking by, naked bodies on Powell Street in San Francisco. Then I went to New York. This is actually a very dangerous neighborhood of New York. Again, I was using a wide angle lens and zeroing in, getting close to people. When I showed this, my instructor said, "Are you out of your mind? What were you doing right next to these guys?" And I was just having fun. I was starting to get to know people and learning how to get close, because when you do wide angle, you have to be close. So I learned how to do that. This was standing outside the barber shop, just pointing my camera at them. I thought she was beautiful. And then I started traveling, and this is China, the back of a woman, and we can continue. This is Morocco, just sitting in the desert watching the sunset. This is India. I got hooked on India, completely hooked on India, as you'll see. This is at the Camel Festival in northern India. This is just in the village. This was, we camped out along the river. This is across from Varanasi, and this is a holy man walking out. This actually won the photography award at the conference. So by now, you can go to the next one, but I want to pause for a long time, actually, because we've now skipped 2 phases. So you might have noticed between 2 and 3, there was a significant difference. Did anyone notice? I would have shoved you out of the way if you were in my picture, in my original photography. It was empty buildings, it was equipment, it was flowers, it was trees. You never saw a human being. And now you haven't seen anything but human beings. Well, it was very interesting. Just before this happened, I went back to Freeman Patterson, who is really my god. I mean, I adore the man. He's, as I say, he's in New Brunswick, Canada. Freeman Patterson was doing a presentation about his own work, and he said, I have learned that my photography tells me about myself faster than I can know about myself. I can see what's evolving about me by looking at my pictures. And as he said that, I looked at my pictures, and I was completely unaware of this shift. And I realized what had happened was my husband had died. And I went from a human being in my life and in my bed to all of a sudden, I wanted human beings in my camera. And I wanted to be close to them, and I wanted to connect to them. And so this transition happened without my being aware of it at all. And at the same time, coincidentally or not, because I took a few of those classes where they made me tape the camera shut on the wide angle, I really had to get close. to accomplish what I wanted. But I also learned that that's what I loved. And so I started doing a lot of photography of people and a lot of photography with a wide-angle lens. Well, the next thing that happened was a lot more surprising. This is the first picture and the last picture of the previous phase of my life, of my photographic life. So photographers, I go on a lot of photography trips. You carry cameras, one on each side, you got lenses this long, and you know, you're carrying 100 pounds of equipment, thousands of dollars worth of stuff. This image was taken in Cuba. And if you look at it very closely, you can see everything. I mean, this is incredible detail. You can see her chair, you can see every wrinkle on her face. You know, this is just like a high quality image. She's sitting inside an old, you know, a room that is a wreck. Cuba's a wreck. And I was just walking by, and I kind of, you know, showed her what I was doing, and I took a picture of her. Well, it turns out I was using an iPhone. And this was the beginning of my iPhone career. And the reason this picture is so good is that she really wasn't aware of what I was doing. Everybody walks around with an iPhone. I didn't look like a photographer. And so she didn't get frightened, she didn't get worried, she just looked at me. And this is actually the end of my carrying a camera around. I had a camera, I have her picture on a camera. But this was it. It was like, oh my God. And it actually, within this trip, it exploded. So the next picture, oh shoot, it's out of order again. Darn it. Okay, is the green guy here? Go one more, yeah, okay, so the green guy's here. So the whole photography group walked by this guy. We wanted to take his picture. But again, we were in Cuba, they wouldn't let us into the building. Who knew why? You know, who cares? So there's this guy walking down these stairs. All the photographers have got their big lenses out, they're trying everything. And just as we're leaving, I walk up to the front door, literally one-handed with my iPhone, and I stick it right, you know, where you could without being very noticeable, and I clicked with my thumb. That was it. We're talking about a one-handed click. And I got clearly, you know, a picture that I adore. And then go back, then I was walking through the marketplace, and this guy was cutting bananas, again inside a dark room. I am a horrible flash photographer. I mean, I am just really bad. It's a pain in the ass. And this required flash, or I thought it did. And so I told my friends about it. They got their flash out, and you know, they went to town. And as they left, I thought, oh, I might as well try it. This and the next picture are both iPhone pictures. And all I did was take them very dark, and they came out just perfect. So this trip was the end of cameras. So if you'll continue. This is in India. I go to India twice a year. I'm going again in 2 months. I love it. These people are sitting in what's called a tuk-tuk. We're talking about, you know, a device about the size of a large bicycle. This is Myanmar, which is another favorite place of mine. This woman is coming out of the boat to see what I'm doing. We're in an area of a tribe that is basically dying. And by the way, if you want to hear about it, Sivani, when am I reading?
On the 26th of September.
On the 26th of September. So there's going to be a reading about the story. Wait till you see the next picture. We're getting to it. This is a tribe of people who have lived on the water. They're called Sigani, gypsies of the sea. And so this is them fixing up their boats. Their culture is dying, but they're still working at it. And so we took pictures of them. And one of the things they did was dive from boats like this into the sea. So I am standing on a boat like that. He's diving off of a boat like that. Look at the quality of this.
Wow.
You know, I know I keep going on and on about it, but the person next to me was standing with a $20,000 camera, going blah, 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 and I took 2 shots. This is an iPhone. You know.
What version?
Well, that's what everybody asks. It's not about the camera. The picture of the woman was taken in 2015, so whatever iPhone existed. This was taken in 2016, whatever iPhone existed. I do have a 10, which, as Savani knows, I'm struggling to learn how to use. But it's not about the camera. That's what everybody always asks. They like your picture, they want to know, what lens did you use? So, I don't know, this was maybe a 7, maybe a 6. It's amazing. And this is the other one I shot. Look at that, you can see the metal. I think you could probably read it. It's just unbelievable what you can do with an iPhone. So that's what I do now. This is in Iran, where I went last year. You can do incredibly artistic stuff. You know, you can get close to people. And this is what I've started realizing now, is that I'm more about getting to the people than the photography. That's what I care about. You know, it's just, you can keep going because we're just going to be looking at people. This was a group of people who were blessing each other in the dawn. There we go, look at this. I mean, she's pulling him out of the water. I have a ton of these. There's a show in Healdsburg. This is Calcutta. Okay, this I want you to see. These are 2 in a row. Because people always say to me, how do you relate to these people? And the truth is, maybe it's because I grew up in a refugee camp, I don't know, but to me, we're all just people. And so this guy comes out and he says, you know, what the hell are you doing? Look at the next picture. You know, we're buddies. It's like, oh, she's taking a picture of me, you know. So I really do connect to people. I love doing it. This too is a different part of India, very remote. Look at her, she's just, you know, very serious. Look at the next one. And I've now gotten into selfies. And you can actually do great things with selfies. I mean, I want to be with her. I loved her. So there I am. So I'm starting to learn how to do some really interesting things. So I'm enjoying that. And 5. Okay, so the next piece that I'm going to do, I'm going to read you something. So I'm a writer and a photographer. And I'm a travel writer and a travel photographer. And it sounds like those two should go together perfectly. But one of the things that's true for me is I photograph from the heart and I write from the heart. I'm not a documentary photographer and I'm not a documentary writer. You know, I've been to India twice a year for the last 8 years. I've never been to the Taj Mahal. I will never go to the Taj Mahal. I just don't care. I want to touch the people. I want to see the people. I want to feel the people. So you see my pictures in, you know, other than the fact that you can tell what kind of people they are, you don't know where I am because I'm just getting the life. And so trying to combine photography and writing is tough, but people really love it and I really love it. So now I'm starting to do that more. And this is going to be an example. I'm going to close with a short story I wrote, and ironically, it's about my Russian father, but circumstantially. So I went to Sri Lanka a few weeks ago. Everybody know where that is? It's an island off of India. And we went all over the island, and towards the end, you know, there's a lot of coastline, of course, and so there's a lot of fishermen. Matthew, you can just go through these any way you want. And I'll read the story. It's called Sri Lanka Seaside. Again, all iPhone. Look at this bird. It shows up right into my camera. And they take these boats out. I don't know how they fit in them. Look at how skinny those boats are. And they go out and fish in them. So anyway, it was wonderful. I sit watching the dawn rise over the ocean, always a different ocean, whose molecules perhaps touched my far younger self as I fished with my father. I sit here now in peace and contemplate the patterns left in the sand, the rocks in the water, the sound of waves. It takes but an instant to gain a freeing calm, a soothing, generous gift from the earth. I never had this sense of peace as a child. If I calmed down for 1 minute, a rock would push its way into my consciousness, a rock that needed to be dug up, retrieved, explored for urchins thrown into the water, a source of chaos that my father eventually had to quell. Today's version of his daughter understands his need for those calm hours at the water, comprehends that the long pole he carried was his guardian against interruption, that the fish we ate were merely an excuse, although a welcome one, for his pre-dawn slipping away from responsibilities, for the hours he spent alone, for his departure, for a while at least, from struggles, for his dive into peace. And finally, I think about the morning while I was high in the Himalayas of northern India, that he rose for the final time in the pre-dawn moments. A short time later, he could have been at a beach like this one, whose water lapped his favorite city, his San Francisco. He could have been hooking cornmeal balls carefully crafted the night before to tease the fish. Maybe he did all those things. Maybe he's still doing them. Maybe it is him I watch in the distance, hanging on to the pole that reaches over waves that lap the beaches of Sri Lanka. Maybe it is he who is watching over me, teaching me to enjoy life in a new way. I can't know for certain what he did, because on that morning, while I slept in a tent beneath a 20,000-foot peak in the Himalayas, he slipped quietly and quickly away. I see a fisherman in the distance, as happens so often when I am in the time zone of the land I was exploring, as he too started exploring something new. My mind turns to Papa with an inevitability that is both familiar and soothing.